The Chicago skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan Caldwell's mansion, a sprawling testament to his success as the 30-year-old white American CEO of Caldwell Innovations. At 6:00 p.m., the marble halls echoed with the sharp click of heels as Margaret Caldwell, his 55-year-old mother, also white, swept in, without knocking her platinum blonde hair as immaculate as her tailored suit. She carried the air of a woman who commanded boardrooms and bent wills, her blue eyes fixed on her son sprawled on a leather couch, reviewing contracts on his tablet. "Everything's arranged, Ethan," Margaret announced, her voice crisp as autumn frost. "The dinner is on Friday, and your engagement to Abigail Thornton will be announced. Her family's already commissioning a custom gown." At 28, Abigail, a white socialite with a smile as polished as her pedigree, was the perfect match to merge their tech empire with the Thorntons' real estate fortune. His fair skin flushed with irritation. Ethan looked up slowly, his green eyes narrowing. "What engagement?" he asked, voice low but sharp, like someone who'd just been told he'd signed up for a marathon he never entered. "Yours," Margaret replied, folding her arms. "With Abigail. You're 30, Ethan. It's time to stop dodging responsibility. This marriage will secure our legacy. You and Abigail are a perfect fit, presentable, aligned, strategic." "I never agreed to this," Ethan said, standing, his 6-foot frame towering over the coffee table. "I've told you, I'm not marrying Abigail. I'm already seeing someone." Margaret's expression shifted, her lips pursing, as if Ethan had just proposed opening a lemonade stand instead of running a tech empire. Seeing someone who she demanded, her tone daring him to produce a name worthy of her approval. Ethan's gaze darted across the room, landing on Zoe Carter, a 28-year-old Black American housekeeper perched on a ladder in the front hallway, polishing a crystal chandelier. Her dark skin glowed under the soft light, her braided hair tied back with a colorful scarf as she hummed a jazz tune, earbuds dangling around her neck. She made a playful face at her reflection in the crystal, unaware of the storm brewing nearby. "Her," Ethan said, pointing at Zoe. "Zoe's my girlfriend." Before Margaret could protest, he strode toward Zoe, his polished shoes clicking on the marble. "Ethan, don't you dare," Margaret began, but it was too late. Zoe turned just as Ethan reached her, and before she could say a word, he cupped her face and kissed her, a bold 3-second press of lips that sent a jolt through the room. Zoe froze, her brown eyes wide with shock. By the 4th second, she registered the warmth of his breath. She shoved him back by the 5th, hard enough to make him stumble. "Are you out of your mind?" Zoe snapped, ripping off her yellow rubber gloves and tossing them to the floor. Her voice, rich with indignation, filled the hall. "You don't just kiss someone like that. I'm cleaning your chandelier, not auditioning for your soap opera." Ethan, regaining his balance, ran a hand through his sandy hair, his face a mix of regret and defiance. "I can explain." "No, you can't." Zoe cut him off, hands on her hips. "You kissed me in front of your mother, and I haven't even finished this chandelier." "What's wrong with you?" Margaret stood frozen, her designer purse clutched like a shield. "This is absurd, Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. "A housekeeper. You've lost all sense." "She's not just a housekeeper," Ethan shot back, surprising himself with his conviction. "She's incredible." He glanced at Zoe, who was glaring daggers, her dark skin flushed angrily. "Incredible," Margaret scoffed, her heels clicking as she turned to leave. "This is a bad joke and I won't entertain it." The door slammed behind her, and each step was a verdict of disapproval. Zoe crossed her arms, her gaze boring into Ethan. "Start talking, Mr. CEO, or I'm walking out that door too. And trust me, I don't care how many zeros are in your bank account." Ethan sighed, rubbing his neck. "My mother's been pushing this arranged marriage with Abigail Thornton for months. It's a business deal to merge our companies. I panicked, said I was dating someone, and you were right there. Right there, Zoe echoed, her voice rising. So, I'm convenient. Can you use me as a prop because I'm wiping down your fancy lights? No, it's not like that, Ethan said, his tone softer. I'm sorry. It was a stupid move. I couldn't think of another way out. Zoe grabbed her cleaning rag, pointing it at him like a weapon. You don't get to invade my space like that, Ethan Caldwell. I'm not your escape plan. She turned, storming toward the service wing, her scarf bouncing with each step. Ethan stood alone, the rag's faint dampness lingering on his shirt where it had grazed him. His heart raced, not from Margaret's threats, but from the fire in Zoe's eyes. A fire he hadn't expected to stir something in him. Hey, what did you think of that kiss? Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Chicago, New York, or elsewhere. If Zoe's fiery reaction got you hooked, give this story a like to keep the drama coming. And don't forget to subscribe for the next part. Things are about to get even wilder. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor, where Zoe Carter scrubbed a stubborn stain. Her movements were brisk, almost aggressive, as if she could erase the memory of Ethan Caldwell's impulsive kiss from the day before. The service wing's quiet hum of activity, clinking dishes, the soft whir of a vacuum, was interrupted by the deliberate tap of Ethan's polished shoes approaching the kitchen. Zoe straightened, wiping her hands on her apron, and fixed him with a stare that could have cracked glass. In a crisp navy suit, Ethan leaned against the doorframe, a coffee mug in hand, his expression a mix of hesitation and resolve. Good morning, Zoe, he said, his voice softer than usual, testing the waters. Morning, boss, she replied, the word boss, sharp as a blade. Come to kiss me again, or here to inspect my work? Ethan winced, setting the mug on the counter. I came to apologize. Yesterday was a mistake. I shouldn't have put you in that position. You think Zoe crossed her arms, her braided hair swaying as she tilted her head. You used me to dodge your problems. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. You're right. I panicked. My mother's been relentless about this marriage to Abigail Thornton. It's not just about family. It's a merger to save our company from investor pressure. I saw you and I just acted. Zoe's eyes narrowed, but she didn't interrupt. Ethan took a step closer, careful not to crowd her. I need your help, Zoe. I'm asking you to pretend to be my girlfriend for 1 week until I can convince my mother to back off. I'll pay you $5,000 wired to your account today. The number hung in the air like a spark. Zoe's face remained unreadable, but her mind raced. $5,000 could cover the next round of medical bills for her brother Jamal's heart condition, maybe even speed up his surgery. She thought of the hospital's cold waiting room, her mother's tired eyes, the endless forms demanding payment. But the idea of playing Ethan's pawn stung her pride. You think I'm for sale? She asked, her voice low, dangerous. You think I'll smiles and play house because you wave money at me? No, Ethan said quickly, raising his hands. You're intelligent, capable, and probably the only person to pull this off. You stood up to me yesterday without blinking. I need someone with that kind of strength. Zoe scoffed, turning to rinse a cloth in the sink, buying time to think. The water splashed against the steel, mirroring the churn in her stomach. She'd spent years proving she didn't need anyone's charity, fixing her family's problems with her own hands. But Jamal's last doctor's visit had been grim without surgery. Soon his condition could worsen. $5,000 wasn't just money. It was time, maybe even his life. She faced Ethan, drying her hands. If I do this, we have rules. Rule 1, no more surprise kisses. You touch me without permission, so the deal's off. Rule 2, no comments about my looks or my job. I'm not your project. Rule 3, you respect me, period. I'm not your employee in this charade. I'm your equal, or walk. Ethan's lips twitched almost a smile, but he caught himself. Fair. Anything else? Yeah, Zoe said, stepping closer, her voice firm. This is a job, not a favor. You cross a line. I'm done, and you'll explain to your mother why your girlfriend vanished. Got it? Got it, Ethan said, extending his hand. Deal. Zoe hesitated, her gaze locked on his. She saw something in his eyes, not just desperation, but a flicker of genuine respect. She shook his hand, her grip as unyielding as her resolve. Deal. Now get out of my kitchen. These counters won't clean themselves. Ethan nodded, grabbing his mug and stepping back. We start tomorrow with dinner with my family. I'll send you the details. As he left, Zoe exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. She grabbed a sponge and attacked the counter, trying to scrub away the unease in her chest. She wasn't doing this for Ethan. She was doing it for Jamal, her mother, and the family that depended on her. But a small part of her wondered what it would be like to stand beside Ethan Caldwell, even as a pretense in a world so far from hers. Later that afternoon in the staff break room, Zoe sat with her co-worker Tanya, a wiry woman with a knack for gossip and folding linens with military precision. Tanya glanced at Zoe's tense expression as she sorted cleaning supplies. You look like you just sold your soul. What happened? Zoe snorted, tossing a rag into a bucket. Ethan Caldwell happened. He kissed me yesterday to dodge some rich girl engagement, and now he's paying me to play his girlfriend for a week. Tanya's eyes widened, and her folding paused. He what girl? That's a plot twist I didn't see coming. You said yes, for $5,000. Zoe admitted, her voice quieter. Jamal's surgery isn't cheap, but I made it clear I'm not his toy. This is business. Tanya leaned back, whistling. $5,000. That's a start. But be careful, Zoe. Rich guys like him, they think everything's a game until it's not. I know, Zoe said, her jaw tight. That's why I set rules. He steps out of line, I'm out. Tanya grinned, resuming her folding. You're tougher than most, but that man's got charm and a checkbook. Don't let either mess with your head. Zoe nodded, but Tanya's words lingered as she returned to work. In the quiet of the mansion's library, she dusted shelves lined with leather-bound books she'd never had time to read. Her phone buzzed a text from her mother, Lorraine, confirming Jamal's next appointment. The cost loomed like a shadow, and Zoe gripped the duster tighter. This deal with Ethan was a means to an end, nothing more. But as she caught her reflection in a gilded mirror, she couldn't shake the memory of his kiss, brief, reckless, and inexplicably warm. The Chicago wind whipped through the downtown streets as Zoe followed Ethan through the gleaming glass doors of Caldwell Innovations headquarters. The lobby was a cathedral of modern design, polished steel soaring ceilings, and a digital wall displaying real-time data streams. Zoe's sneakers squeaked faintly on the marble floor, starkly contrasting with Ethan's polished loafers. She adjusted her scarf, feeling the weight of curious glances from employees in tailored suits. This was Ethan's domain, a world of power and precision, and she was here to understand the man behind the impulsive kiss and the risky deal they'd struck. Ethan led her to the elevator, his posture relaxed, but eyes scanning the lobby with a CEO's vigilance. Thanks for coming, he said as the doors slid shut. You should see what I do before tomorrow's dinner. It's part of who I am. Zoe raised an eyebrow, leaning against the elevator wall. You mean besides kissing housekeepers to dodge your problems? I'm all ears. He chuckled, a low sound that softened his usual intensity. Fair point. But there's more to me than bad decisions. I want you to know what's at stake. The elevator opened to the 20th floor, revealing a sleek research lab buzzing with quiet energy. Engineers in white coats tinkered at workstations, screens glowing with code and schematics. Ethan guided Zoe to a corner where a prototype sat on a workbench, a compact device resembling a sleek remote wired to a wheelchair frame. "This is our latest project," he said, picking it up. "A voice-activated controller for wheelchairs. It's designed for people with limited mobility, like my friend Matt from high school. He was in a car accident at 16, and I promised I'd build something to make his life easier." Zoe's gaze softened as she touched the device, her fingers tracing its smooth edges. "You built this for him." "Not just for him," Ethan said, his voice earnest for anyone who needs it. Caldwell. Innovations isn't just about profit. It's about solving problems. That's why I started this company, but it's grown bigger than expected. Now we've got 800 employees, investors breathing down my neck, and a board that wants this merger with the Thorntons to secure capital. Zoe set the device down, her eyes meeting his. "So that's why your mom's pushing this Abigail thing?" "Money." Ethan nodded, leaning against the workbench. "The Thorntons' real estate empire could fund our expansion into Europe. Without it, we risk losing contracts and laying off staff. My mother sees Abigail as the key to stability. She doesn't care that I don't love her." Zoe crossed her arms, processing the weight of his words. "Sounds like a lot of pressure. But why drag me into it? You could have picked anyone to play your girlfriend." Ethan hesitated, his green eyes searching hers. "Because you don't pretend, Zoe. You're real. I saw it yesterday when you called me out. Most people in my world nod and smile. You don't." She smirked, but there was warmth in it. "Flattery won't make me like this deal anymore. But I get it, you're stuck. Just don't expect me to swoon over your tech toys." He laughed, leading her to another station where a screen displayed an app interface. "This translates sign language in real time," he explained. "We're testing it with local schools. It's not perfect yet, but it's a start." Zoe watched a demo video, her expression shifting from skepticism to quiet admiration, as a child signed to a teacher through the app. Ethan's passion was palpable, his hands animated as he described the code behind it. For a moment, she saw not the CEO, but the boy who'd made a promise to a friend. As they left the lab, Zoe glanced at him. "You care about this stuff, don't you?" "Not just the money. It's why I get up in the morning," Ethan said, his voice quieter. "But it's also why I'm trapped. If I don't play my mother's game, I could lose this everything we've built." Zoe nodded, her thoughts drifting to her family's struggles, Jamal's hospital bills, her mother's double shifts. "I know about being trapped," she said softly. "But you've got a choice, Ethan. You have to be brave enough to make it." They stepped into the elevator, their silence heavy with unspoken understanding. Zoe's phone buzzed, a reminder from her mother about Jamal's next appointment. She slipped it back into her pocket, her resolve hardening. This deal with Ethan was for her family, but seeing his world made her wonder about the man behind the suit. He wasn't just a rich guy with a problem. He was someone carrying a dream just like she was. Back at the mansion, Zoe found Tanya in the break room folding towels with her usual precision. "So how was the CEO's grand tour?" Tanya asked, eyeing Zoe's thoughtful expression. "Fancy gadgets, big dreams?" Zoe said, grabbing a coffee. "He's not what I expected." "Cares about more than just his wallet." Tanya raised an eyebrow. "Careful, Zoe. You may like him." Zoe snorted, but her smile betrayed her. "It's just a job, Tanya. $5,000 for Jamal's surgery." "That's all?" "Sure," Tanya said, smirking. "Just keep those rules of yours tight. Rich boys have a way of blurring lines." As Zoe returned to her cleaning, the lab's images lingered. Ethan's hands on the prototype, his voice full of purpose. She shook her head, focusing on the mop in her hands. This was business, nothing more. But a small, stubborn part of her wondered if Ethan Caldwell's world might have room for someone like her. La Lumiere restaurant was a fortress of elegance in Chicago's Gold Coast, its chandeliers casting a soft glow over white linen tablecloths and servers who moved like silent diplomats. Zoe smoothed the hem of her borrowed navy dress, a simple knee-length number from her cousin's closet, as she stepped out of Ethan's sleek black car. Her hair was swept into a high bun, a single silver clip her only adornment. In a tailored charcoal suit, Ethan offered his arm, his expression a mix of nerves and determination. "You ready for this?" he asked, his voice low as they approached the entrance. Zoe's lips curved into a half-smile. "Ready to face your family's judgment?" "Sure. Just don't expect me to curtsy." He chuckled, the sound easing the tension in his shoulders. "Just be you. That's more than enough." Inside, the air smelled of rosemary and wealth, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices. Zoe's sneakers swapped for her sister's low heels clicked softly as they were led to a private dining room. Margaret Caldwell sat at the head of a mahogany table, her posture regal, her eyes scanning Zoe like a jeweler inspecting a questionable gem. Beside her was Richard, her husband, his gray hair neatly combed, his smile warmer than his wife's. "Most people in our circle aim a bit higher, don't they?" "Ethan." Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Zoe spoke, her tone calm but pointed. "High or low, it's not about where you aim, but what you build. I'd rather start small and earn it than chase someone else's idea of success." Richard chuckled, raising his glass to hide his amusement. Margaret's lips thinned, but she said nothing, her fork pausing mid-air. Ethan's hand found Zoe's under the table, a brief squeeze of gratitude. She didn't pull away, though her pulse quickened at the contact. The conversation shifted to business with Richard, asking Ethan about Caldwell Innovations' latest projects. Zoe listened, noting how Ethan's voice lit up when discussing accessibility tech, a stark contrast to Margaret's focus on mergers and profits. As dessert arrived, petite chocolate tarts that looked too perfect to eat, Abigail tried again. "Zoe, how did you and Ethan meet?" "It's such an unconventional story." Zoe glanced at Ethan, a playful glint in her eyes. "Oh, it was a splashy start. I spilled coffee on him on my first day at the mansion. He was less than thrilled, but I made an impression." Ethan grinned, the first genuine smile of the night. "She did. Kept me on my toes ever since." Margaret's eyebrow arched. "And you can keep up with our world, Zoe. It's not exactly coffee spills and dust rags." Zoe met her gaze unflinching. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm not here to keep up with your world. I'm here because Ethan asked me to be. Whether that fits your plans or not, that's his call, not mine." The table fell silent, the clink of silverware pausing. Richard cleared his throat, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Well," said Zoe to authenticity. He raised his glass, and Ethan followed his eyes, locked on Zoe, with something more profound than gratitude, admiration, maybe even a spark of something more. As they left the restaurant, Ethan walked Zoe to his car, the city lights reflecting off the pavement. "You were incredible in there," he said, his voice soft. "Most people crumble under my mother's stare." Zoe shrugged, climbing into the passenger seat. "I've faced worse than a fancy dinner and some shade. But thanks for having my back." "Always," Ethan said, starting the engine. The word lingered between them, heavier than it should have been for a fake relationship. Zoe looked out the window, her heart thudding. This was just a deal, a paycheck for Jamal's surgery. But the warmth in Ethan's voice, the way he'd stood up for her, made her wonder if the lines of their agreement were already starting to blur. The dining room at La Lumiere buzzed with the clink of wine glasses and murmured conversations. But Zoe felt the weight of eyes on her as she excused herself from the table. The dinner had been a gauntlet of subtle barbs from Margaret and Abigail, and her nerves were frayed, though she'd kept her composure. She slipped into the restaurant's opulent restroom, the marble counters and gold fixtures starkly contrasting with the cracked tiles of her apartment's bathroom. As she washed her hands, the door swung open, and Abigail Thornton stepped in her emerald gown, catching the light like liquid jade. Zoe met Abigail's gaze in the mirror, bracing herself. Abigail's lips curved into a smile that was all edges, her posture poised but predatory, as she leaned against the counter, reapplying her lipstick with deliberate precision. "You're quite the performer, Zoe," she said, her voice smooth as silk but sharp as a blade. "Holding your own out there. Most people would have buckled by now." Zoe dried her hands, turning to face her. "I'm not like most people. If you've got something to say, Abigail, say it." Abigail capped her lipstick, her movements slow, calculated. "Fine. Let's be honest. You're a novelty to Ethan, a distraction from his pressure. But this," she gestured vaguely, encompassing Zoe's borrowed dress and their invisible divide. "It's not real. You don't belong in his world. Deep down you know it." Zoe's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Maybe I don't belong in your world, but I'm here because Ethan asked me to be. That's more than you can say." Abigail's smile faltered, a flicker of something raw crossing her face. Pain, perhaps, or fear. She set her purse down, her fingers trembling slightly. "You think I want this marriage because I'm some shallow socialite chasing a ring?" she asked, her voice quieter now, almost brittle. "You have no idea what's at stake for me." Zoe crossed her arms, her curiosity piqued despite herself. "Then enlighten me. Why are you so set on Ethan?" Abigail hesitated, her gaze dropping to the marble counter. "My father's company, Thornton Properties, is bleeding money. Bad investments, lawsuits, you name it. If we don't merge with Caldwell Innovations, we're finished. My family's legacy, my mother's charity work, and the employees who've been with us for decades collapse." She looked up, her eyes glistening but defiant. "Ethan's my way out, not because I love him, but because I must save what's left of my world." Zoe's expression softened, but only slightly. She knew what it was like to fight for family, to carry a burden heavier than you could bear alone. "I get it," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "You're fighting for your own, but that doesn't give you the right to tear me down. I'm not your enemy, Abigail. You're in my way." Abigail shot back her composure, returning like a mask, snapping into place. "Ethan's confused right now, playing this rebellious game with you. But he'll come around. He always does. Men like him don't choose women like you, not for long." Zoe stepped closer, her eyes locked on Abigail's. "You don't know Ethan as well as you think, and you can't tell me. I'm not here to play games or steal your prize. I'm here for my family, just like you. But I won't let you make me feel small to prop up your plan." Abigail's lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, the restroom was silent, save for the faint hum of the ventilation. Zoe's words hung between them, a challenge wrapped in empathy. Abigail grabbed her purse, her movements sharp. "Enjoy your moment, Zoe," she said, her voice cold again. "It won't last." As Abigail swept out, Zoe exhaled, her hands gripping the counter. The confrontation had shaken her, not because of Abigail's venom, but because of the glimpse into her desperation. Zoe saw herself in that family fight, but refused to let Abigail's pain justify her cruelty. She straightened her dress, adjusted her bun, and headed back to the dining room, her resolve hardened. Ethan looked up as she returned, his brow furrowing at her tense expression. "Everything okay?" he whispered, leaning close as she sat. Zoe nodded, forcing a small smile. Just a little restroom drama. Nothing I can't handle. He studied her, his hand brushing hers under the table. You don't have to handle it alone. I've got your back. Zoe met his gaze, the warmth in his eyes unsettling her. Good to know, she said, her voice softer than she intended. The dinner resumed, but Abigail's words echoed in Zoe's mind, mingling with the memory of Ethan's touch. This was a job, a deal to help Jamal. But the lines were blurring, and Zoe wasn't sure she could keep them straight much longer. The morning after the tense dinner at La Lumiere, Zoe moved through the Caldwell mansion's kitchen, efficiently wiping down counters and organizing supplies. The memory of Abigail's biting words lingered, but Zoe pushed them aside, focusing on the rhythm of her work. A faint sparking sound from the corner interrupted the refrigerator's hum. She frowned, tracing it to an old coffee maker, its frayed cord spitting tiny bursts of light. Not today, she muttered, grabbing a screwdriver from the utility closet. Zoe had fixed many appliances, growing up leaky faucets, wobbly chairs, even her mother's ancient toaster. Money was always tight, so she'd learned to make do. She unplugged the coffee maker, confident that the problem was a loose wire. Kneeling on the tiled floor, she unscrewed the base, her scarf slipping loose as she worked. She didn't know that the outlet itself was faulty, a hidden defect, sending a faint current through the cord even when unplugged. As Zoe touched the exposed wires with her screwdriver, a sharp jolt shot through her arm. She yelped, the shock throwing her backward. The screwdriver clattered to the floor, followed by a metal tray she knocked over in her fall, its crash echoing through the kitchen. Pain seared her hand, a red burn blooming across her palm. She sat gasping, clutching her wrist as her legs trembled from the shock. When the crash pierced the quiet, Ethan was in his office reviewing a report on Caldwell Innovations' European expansion. His head snapped up, heart lurching for reasons he couldn't name. He dropped his pen and sprinted down the hall, his polished shoes skidding as he reached the kitchen. Zoe was on the floor, pale, her breath uneven. The coffee maker lay open beside her, wires exposed like a surgical wound. Zoe. What happened? Ethan knelt beside her, his voice tight with worry. He touched her shoulder gently, scanning her for injuries. Her hand was red, the burns stark against her skin. Tried to fix the coffee maker, she said, her voice shaky but defiant. Got shocked. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Ethan's eyes widened, taking in the scattered tools and the faulty appliance. You're hurt. Can you stand? I think so, Zoe said, but as she tried, her knees buckled. Ethan caught her, his arms steadying her without hesitation. No arguments. He said, his tone firm, but laced with concern. I'm taking you to the hospital. Before she could protest, he scooped her up, ignoring her weak attempt to push him away. Ethan, I can walk, Zoe grumbled, her voice lacking its usual fire. This is dramatic. Your hand's burned and you're shaking, he said, carrying her toward the garage. We're going, end of story. The drive to the hospital was a tense 15 minutes. Ethan's knuckles white on the steering wheel. He glanced at Zoe every few seconds, her bandaged hand resting in her lap, her face turned toward the window. Stop staring, she said, catching his eye at a red light. I'm not dying. You scared the hell out of me, Ethan admitted, his voice quieter. I heard that crash and thought, I don't know what I thought. Zoe's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through. What, that I'd electrocuted the whole mansion? I'm tougher than that, clearly, he said. But his eyes lingered softer than usual. Their worry wasn't just about the deal they'd made. It felt personal, raw. Ethan insisted on staying in the exam room at the hospital, leaning against the wall as the doctor examined Zoe's hand. It's a superficial burn, the doctor said, applying ointment and wrapping it in gauze. Keep it clean and it'll heal in a week. You're lucky it wasn't worse. See, Zoe told you it was fine, flexing her bandaged fingers at Ethan. Lucky doesn't mean fine. He countered, his voice sharp, but his expression softening. Why didn't you call me? I could have gotten someone to fix it. Zoe rolled her eyes, standing as the doctor left. Because I've been fixing things my whole life. A coffee maker's not going to take me out. Besides, you could hire some guy to charge $200 for a 10-cent wire. Ethan's laugh was reluctant but genuine. You're stubborn as hell. You know that. She takes one to know one, and she shoots back. But her tone is lighter now, and the pain is easing under the hospital's fluorescent lights. The silence was different in the car on the way back, less tense, more companionable. Ethan glanced at her again, his voice hesitant. You always do this. Fix everything yourself. Pretty much, Zoe said, staring out at the city lights. Growing up, we didn't have the cash to call a pro if something broke. You learn to figure it out or go without. Ethan nodded, his hands tightening on the wheel. That's impressive. I don't think I've ever fixed anything that wasn't a business deal. Zoe's laugh was soft, almost warm. Please stick with me, Caldwell. I'll have you rewiring appliances in no time. He smiled, but the weight of her words settled in his chest. She wasn't just the housekeeper he'd roped into a fake relationship. She faced the world head-on, no matter the odds. As they pulled into the mansion's driveway, Ethan turned to her. No more fixing appliances, okay? At least not without telling me. Zoe raised an eyebrow, stepping out of the car. No promises, boss. But thanks for the ride and the overreaction. He watched her walk inside her scarf, swaying with each step, and felt a tug in his chest that had nothing to do with their deal. Zoe Carter was trouble, but the kind he was starting to want more of. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Caldwell mansion's polished floors as Zoe swept the grand staircase, her bandaged hand moving carefully, but with determination. The burn from the coffee maker incident still stung, but she pushed through her focus, split between her work and the unsettling warmth she'd felt in Ethan's concern the day before. Their deal was supposed to be simple, $5,000 for a week of playing his girlfriend, but the lines were blurring, and Zoe wasn't sure how to redraw them. Ethan sat at his desk in his office, scrolling through emails about Caldwell Innovation's latest prototype. His mind, though, kept drifting to Zoe, her stubborn independence, the way she'd laughed off her injury in the hospital. He was about to check on her when his assistant Laura knocked and entered, her face grim. She slid an envelope across his desk. This just arrived, sir. No sender, but it's marked urgent. Ethan frowned, tearing it open. Inside were 3 glossy photos. Zoe entering a hotel room. Zoe standing at the door, talking to a man in a bathrobe, and a third, where they appeared to be leaning close. A typed note read, "You should know who you're defending. A concerned friend." Ethan's stomach twisted, disbelief warring with a rising tide of anger. The man in the photos was Victor Lang, a businessman with a reputation shadier than a back alley. He stood the photos crumpling in his grip and stormed toward the main hall. Zoe was there, dustpan in hand, humming softly. The sight of her so unaware fueled his confusion. "Zoe," he said, his voice too controlled, like a dam holding back a flood. "Where were you this afternoon?" She straightened, brushing a stray braid from her face. "Working." "Why?" Her eyes narrowed at his tone. Ethan tossed the photos onto a nearby table, the images fanning like an accusation. "Working where, with who?" Zoe's gaze dropped to the photos, and her breath caught. The blood drained from her face, leaving her dizzy. "Ethan, what is this?" "You tell me," he said, his voice tight. "That's you in Victor Lang's hotel room. He was in a bathrobe." "Care to explain?" Zoe's hand tightened around the dustpan, her burn stinging as her grip faltered. It's not what it looks like. Victor Lang called me for a side job organizing files at the Grand Chicago Hotel, $500 for 2 hours. I went, saw him like that, and left. I was there 5 minutes tops. 5 minutes. Ethan's laugh was bitter, his eyes hard. With a married man in a hotel room, and you didn't think to mention it. It was a job. Zoe snapped, her voice rising. I didn't mention it because it didn't matter. He said he'd just been at the gym. I didn't stay, Ethan. I'm not that kind of person. He turned away, running a hand through his hair. You know what's pathetic? I thought you were different. I thought there was something real here. But these... He gestured at the photos. They speak for themselves. The words hit Zoe like a slap, her chest tightening. Real. You're the one who roped me into this fake girlfriend mess for your convenience. And now you see some staged photos and decide I'm a liar. She stepped closer, her voice trembling with fury. What hurts most isn't that you don't believe me. It's that you didn't even ask. You looked at those pictures and judged me guilty without a word. Ethan's jaw clenched, but doubt flickered in his eyes, quickly drowned by anger. The evidence is right there, Zoe. What am I supposed to think? Evidence. She laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. Or an excuse to end this before it gets too messy for you. She yanked the mansion key from her apron pocket and slammed it on the table beside the photos. I'm done. Done with your deal. Done with this job. Done with you. I may be a housekeeper, but I have more dignity than you ever understand. Zoe. Wait. Ethan started, but she was already moving her steps quick and resolute toward the service wing. No, she said, pausing at the door, her voice steady despite the tears stinging her eyes. You made your choice, Ethan. When you figure out you're wrong, and you will remember you didn't trust me when it mattered. The door closed behind her, the sound final, leaving Ethan alone with the photos and a hollow ache in his chest. He sank onto the staircase, staring at the images. The logical part of his mind screamed that Zoe's story made sense. She'd never given him reason to doubt her. But the photos, the note, Victor Lang's sleazy reputation, all twisted into a knot of betrayal he couldn't unravel. He'd let his fear of being played, of losing control, cloud his judgment. And now, Zoe was gone, and her emptiness felt bigger than the mansion itself. Zoe pushed through the creaky front door of her family's small South Side Chicago home. The familiar scent of her mother's cooking spiced chicken and cornbread greeting her like a warm embrace. Her heart still ached from the confrontation with Ethan, the sting of his distrust, sharper than the burn on her hand. She dropped her bag by the couch, and the living room's worn furniture and family photos starkly contrasted the Caldwell mansion's sterile grandeur. She'd quit her job and the fake relationship, but the $5,000 Ethan had wired was already in her account, a bittersweet lifeline for her brother's surgery. Her mother, Lorraine, was in the kitchen stirring a pot with the same steady hands that had held their family together through years of struggle. She glanced up, her dark eyes narrowing at Zoe's tense expression. "Rough day, baby?" she asked, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Zoe said that rough doesn't cover it, sinking into a chair at the small dining table. "I quit the mansion job. Ethan, he thought I'd betray him over some stupid photos. Didn't even ask my side." Lorraine's lips pursed, but before she could respond, Jamal shuffled in from the hallway, his thin frame wrapped in a Chicago Bulls hoodie. At 17, he carried a quiet strength despite his heart condition, his smile bright but shadowed by fatigue. "Whoa, sis, you quit," he said, easing into a chair. "Thought you were banking that rich guy's cash for my hospital bills." Zoe's chest tightened. "I got the money, Jamal. Your surgery's covered, but I'm not letting anyone treat me like I'm less than I am, not even a CEO. Jamal leaned forward, his eyes sharp with curiosity. "What happened? Spill it." Zoe sighed, recounting the photos, Victor Lang's setup, and Ethan's accusations. Her voice cracked as she described slamming the key on the table, the finality of walking away. Lorraine listened silently, her hand resting on Zoe's shoulder, while Jamal's expression shifted from amusement to something deeper, more serious. "Man, that's cold," Jamal said, shaking his head. "The guy's got all that money and still can't see it straight. You're worth more than his whole mansion, Zoe." Zoe managed a small smile, but her eyes stung. "Thanks, Jamal. I thought he saw me, not just the housekeeper, but me." Lorraine sat across from her, her voice gentle but firm. "It sounds like he saw enough to care for, but insufficient to trust. That's his failing, not yours." Jamal nodded his fingers, tapping the table. "You've been carrying us forever, sis. I worked double shifts, fixed stuff, and ensured I didn't end up in some hospital bed for good. You're always fighting for us. It may be time you fight for yourself." Zoe looked at him surprised. "What do you mean, I mean?" Jamal said, leaning back. "You're always sacrificing. For me, for Mom, for the bills. But what do you want? This Ethan dude, he messed up big time. But if he's got a shot at being someone you could care about, don't let his mistakes stop you from finding out." Zoe's throat tightened. She'd spent years putting her family first, burying her dreams under the weight of responsibility. Jamal's words hit like a spotlight, illuminating a truth she'd avoided. She'd felt something real with Ethan, even if it was tangled in their fake deal. His concern in the hospital and his passion in the lab had stirred something she wasn't ready to name. "I don't know, Jamal," she said, her voice soft. "He didn't trust me. How do I get past that?" "You don't," Lorraine said, her eyes steady. "Not unless he earns it back. But you're strong enough to decide what's worth fighting for. You always have been." Jamal grinned, a spark of his old mischief returning. "Besides, if he's dumb enough to think you'd mess around with some shady hotel guy, maybe you need to school him. Show him what Zoe Carter's about." Zoe laughed, the sound easing the knot in her chest. "School him? What, like hit him with a broom?" "Nah, worse," Jamal said, smirking. "Make him see he can't live without you. Then make him work for it." Lorraine chuckled, squeezing Zoe's hand. "Listen to your brother. He's got more sense than most CEOs I've heard of." As they ate dinner, the conversation shifted to lighter things. Jamal's dream of studying engineering, Lorraine's latest church choir drama, but Zoe's mind kept circling back to Ethan. She saw the doubt in his eyes, the anger, and how he'd rushed to her side after the coffee maker shock. Maybe Jamal was right. Maybe there was something worth salvaging, but only if Ethan could see her for who she was. Later, as she washed dishes, the phone in her pocket buzzed. She ignored it, assuming it was Tanya checking in. But when it buzzed again, she dried her hands and glanced at the screen. Ethan. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, but Jamal's words echoed in her head. With a deep breath, she left the phone unanswered, her heart torn between guarding herself and wondering if Ethan deserved a chance to make things right. The faded blue paint of Zoe's South Side home glowed faintly under the streetlights as Ethan pulled up in his sleek sedan, the Chicago night wrapping the neighborhood in a quiet hum. His heart pounded, the crumpled photos from Victor Lang's setup burning a hole in his pocket. Hours earlier, his assistant Laura had called with a bombshell. Victor had bragged about Abigail orchestrating the hotel room scheme, confirming Zoe's innocence. Ethan's stomach churned with guilt. He'd let his fear of betrayal blind him, and now he'd driven Zoe away. He checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, his tailored suit and expensive watch, feeling out of place among the cracked sidewalks and modest homes. He'd called Zoe twice, both unanswered, and now he stood at her door, the weight of his mistake heavier than the mansion he'd left behind. He knocked the sound sharp against the evening's stillness. Lorraine answered, her apron dusted with flour, her eyes narrowing as she took in Ethan's polished appearance. She said, "You must be the boss." her voice warm but guarded. Zoe mentioned you. Come to fix what you broke. Ethan swallowed, nodding. I hope so, ma'am. I need to speak with her if that's okay. Lorraine studied him, then called over her shoulder. Zoe. Your boss is here. She stepped aside, gesturing him in. Don't stand on the porch like a salesman. Come in. Zoe appeared in the living room wearing jeans and a Bulls t-shirt, her expression a mix of surprise and wariness. Ethan, what are you doing here? She asked, crossing her arms. I said I'd think about it. I couldn't wait, he said, his voice low but urgent. You didn't answer my calls and I had to make this right. Lorraine raised an eyebrow, glancing between them. Well, you're here now. Sit. I've got coffee. She headed to the kitchen, leaving them in the cozy living room, its walls lined with family photos, and a faint smell of cornbread lingering. Zoe stayed standing, her gaze hard. Talk fast, Caldwell. I'm not in the mood for excuses. Before Ethan could speak, Jamal shuffled in his thin frame, dwarfed by a hoodie. Is this the guy who messed up? He asked, grinning, but with a protective edge. I'm Jamal, Zoe's brother. You've got some explaining to do. Ethan nodded, offering a hesitant smile. Nice to meet you, Jamal. And you're right. I owe her an apology. Lorraine returned with mismatched mugs of coffee, setting them on the table. Go on then, she said, sitting beside Jamal. What's the mistake? Ethan took a deep breath, facing Zoe. I was wrong about the photos. Laura found out Abigail paid Victor Lang to stage them. He set you up to make it look like you were untrustworthy. I should have asked you first, Zoe. I let my fear of being played cloud everything. I'm sorry. Zoe's expression didn't soften, but her eyes flickered with something, curiosity maybe. You believed a stranger's photos over me. Why? Ethan looked down, his hands clasped. Because I was scared. I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, status, power. When I saw those photos, I panicked. I thought maybe you were just part of the game. But that's no excuse. You've been nothing but honest, and I failed you. Jamal leaned forward, his voice sharp. You made my sister cry, man. Zoe doesn't cry easily. You gonna fix that? Ethan's eyes snapped to Zoe, guilt tightening his chest. You cried. It's not essential, Zoe said quickly, but Lorraine cut in. It is, she said, her voice firm. You hurt her, Ethan. That's not small. Ethan nodded, his gaze steady on Zoe. I'm here because I want to make it right. Not just for the deal, but because I care about you. I saw it in the hospital and the lab. You're real, Zoe, in a way I'm not used to. I don't want to lose that. Zoe's jaw tightened, but she sat, her hands wrapping around her mug. You think an apology fixes everything? Trust isn't a switch you flip. I know, Ethan said. I'm asking for a chance to earn it back. My mother has planned another dinner for Saturday, and Abigail will be there. I need you to shut this down with me one last time. After that, no more pretending. I'll tell her the truth, whatever it costs. Zoe studied him, the room quiet, except for the faint tick of a clock. One condition, she said finally. You trust me from now on, no more jumping to conclusions. If you can't do that, I'm out for good. Deal, Ethan said, his voice steady. I promise. Lorraine smiled faintly, standing. Dinner's ready. Ethan, do you eat chicken and rice? I'd love to, he said, glancing at Zoe. If it's no trouble. An hour later, they sat around a small table, plates piled with rice and roasted chicken. As a kid, Jamal teased Zoe about her cooking fails, while Lorraine shared stories of Zoe's knack for fixing things. Ethan listened, soaking in the warmth of their family, which was so different from his own. After dinner, he helped Zoe wash dishes, their shoulders brushing in the cramped kitchen. I meant what I said, he murmured, scrubbing a plate. I'm sorry. I was falling for you in those photos. Hit me where it hurt. Zoe paused, drying a glass and falling for me. Ethan, this was supposed to be fake. It's not, he said, meeting her eyes. Not anymore. She looked away, her heart racing. Let's get through Saturday. Then we'll see. As Ethan left the night air cool against his skin, he felt a fragile hope. Zoe's forgiveness was a start, but he knew earning her trust would be the real challenge. The Chicago Business Association's charity gala filled the Grand Hotel's ballroom with tuxedos and glittering gowns, the air thick with the scent of orchids and ambition. Zoe stood beside Ethan, her borrowed black dress hugging her frame, its simplicity stark against the room's opulence. Her hair was styled elegantly, and a single pearl pin was her only adornment. Ethan offered his arm in a tailored tuxedo, his touch steady, but his eyes scanning the crowd nervously. "You okay?" he whispered, sensing her tension. Zoe nodded, her lips curving into a wry smile. "I feel like a fish in a shark tank, but I've got this." He squeezed her arm gently. "You always do." The ballroom buzzed with Chicago's elite executives, philanthropists, and socialites mingling over champagne flutes. Zoe felt the weight of their glances, some curious, others dismissive, but she held her head high, her posture honed by years of carrying her family's burdens. They'd barely reached their table when Margaret appeared, her silver gown shimmering like armor, Abigail trailing in a crimson dress that screamed confidence. "Ethan," dear Margaret said, kissing his cheek with practiced precision. "Zoe, what a surprise." "Good evening, Mrs. Caldwell," Zoe said, her voice steady. "The gala's beautiful. You must be proud of the turnout." Margaret's smile was tight. "Yes, it's quite the event. I'm sure it's overwhelming for you." Before Zoe could respond, Abigail interjected, her tone saccharine. "Zoe, your dress is so understated. It's almost refreshing in a room like this." "Thanks," Zoe said, her eyes meeting Abigail's without flinching. "Sometimes less says more. Your dress is lovely. It must have taken hours to pick something bold." Abigail's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, sipping her champagne. The evening unfolded with speeches and toasts, Ethan's hand brushing Zoe's under the table during tense moments. As the band struck up a waltz, Margaret pulled Zoe aside, guiding her to a quiet alcove near the terrace, the city lights twinkling beyond the glass doors. "I need to understand, Zoe," Margaret said, her voice low but sharp. "What are you doing with my son? This world, our world, isn't yours. Why are you here?" Zoe's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. "I'm here because Ethan asked me to be Mrs. Caldwell. I'm not trying to take anything from you, but I'm not here to be judged either." Margaret's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of curiosity. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness doesn't mean you belong. Ethan's future is tied to our family's legacy. You can't possibly understand the weight of that." Zoe took a deep breath, her voice softening but firm. "I don't know your world, but I know what fighting for family is like. My mom raised us alone after my dad left. She worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to keep us fed and pay my brother's medical bills. I learned to fix things, to make things work, because giving up wasn't an option. That's my legacy strength, not status. You get that, Mrs. Caldwell, because you fought for your family." Margaret's expression shifted, a crack in her polished facade. She said, "You know nothing about my struggles," but her voice lacked its usual edge. "Don't I?" Zoe said, stepping closer. "Ethan told me you built the family empire after your husband died young. You raised him alone, kept the business alive through sheer will. That's not so different from my mom. We're both products of women who didn't break. I'm not your enemy, Mrs. Caldwell. I'm just trying to live my truth, same as you." For a moment, Margaret was silent, her gaze drifting to the ballroom where Ethan stood, chatting with a board member, but glancing toward them. "I was 25 when I lost Edward," she said quietly. "The company was failing, and everyone said I couldn't save it. I worked 18-hour days, ignored the whispers, the doubts. I did it for Ethan, for our name." Zoe nodded, her eyes steady. "And I work for my brother and my mom. We're not so different. Ethan is choosing his path now. You raised him to be strong enough to do that." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes softened, a rare vulnerability surfacing. "Perhaps I underestimated you," she said almost to herself. "But this path he's choosing, it's risky." "Life's risky," Zoe said, a faint smile breaking through. "But Ethan's not alone in it. Neither are you." Margaret studied her, then nodded curtly. "We'll see." She turned back to the ballroom, but her posture was less rigid, her steps slower, as if Zoe's words had planted a seed. As Zoe rejoined Ethan, he raised an eyebrow. What was that about? "Just a little heart-to-heart." Zoe said, her tone light, but her heart racing. "Your mom's tough, but she's starting to get me." Ethan's smile was warm, his hand lingering on hers. "She's not the only one." Zoe looked away, the intensity in his eyes stirring something she wasn't ready to face. This was still a deal, a job, but the lines were blurring faster than she could control. The Caldwell Innovations headquarters was a hive of chaos, phones ringing and screens flashing red as stock prices plummeted. Ethan stood in the boardroom, his tie loosened, staring at a headline on his tablet. Caldwell Innovations exposed, leaked prototypes, threatened tech giant. The article, published by Tech Insider, detailed unreleased accessibility device schematics and hinted at unethical practices, none true, but damagingly plausible. The source was anonymous, but Ethan's gut pointed to Abigail. Zoe was chopping vegetables for a quick lunch in the mansion kitchen when her phone buzzed with a news alert. She scanned the article, her heart sinking. She'd overheard Abigail's veiled threats at the gala, and this felt like her revenge. As she wiped her hands, the kitchen door swung open, and Abigail stepped in her red dress, contrasting with the stainless steel counters. Her smile was sharp, triumphant. "Zoe, have you seen the news? Such a shame about Ethan's company." Zoe set the knife down, her eyes narrowing. "You did this, didn't you?" Abigail's laugh was light, but her eyes gleamed with malice. "I merely shared what I knew. Ethan should have been more careful with his secrets. Choosing you over me has consequences." Zoe stepped closer, her voice steady. "You didn't just hurt Ethan. You're hurting hundreds of people who work here, all because you couldn't handle rejection." Abigail's smile faltered, but she shrugged. "Business isn't personal, Zoe. It's survival. Ethan made his choice. Now he lives with it. You call this survival?" Zoe said, her voice low, fierce. "You burn everything down because you didn't get your way. I fix things when they break. That's the difference between us." Abigail's eyes flashed, but she turned and left without another word. Zoe grabbed her phone and called Ethan. "I'm coming to the office," she said the moment he picked up. "And I'm bringing help." "Help?" Ethan's voice was strained. "Zoe, we're drowning here." "You'll see," she said, hanging up. Within an hour, she arrived at headquarters with an unexpected crew. Tanya, the housekeeper with an accounting degree, Carlos, the gardener who'd studied engineering, and Miguel, the doorman, with years of marketing experience. They filed into the boardroom, their work boots and aprons starkly contrasting the executives' suits. Ethan blinked, confused. "What's going on?" "We're saving your company," Zoe said, her tone all business. "Tanya has the accounting skills to dig into financial leaks. Carlos can analyze the prototype data for tampering. Miguel's a marketing whiz. He'll help rebuild your image. These people aren't just staff, Ethan. They're talent you've overlooked." Sarah. The head of security stepped forward, her expression grim but determined. She's right, sir. We're in crisis mode. Stocks down 25%, and 3 contracts were canceled. We need all hands. Ethan nodded his exhaustion, giving way to resolve. Okay, Zoe. What's the plan? Tanya spoke first, pulling out a laptop. I'll audit the leaked financials. I'll find it if there's tampering numbers. Don't lie. Carlos adjusted his glasses, already scanning the prototype schematics. These designs have inconsistencies. I can pinpoint what's fake and improve the originals. Miguel grinned, pulling out a notepad. We'll launch a campaign, Caldwell's Core, showing transparency to the real people behind your tech to counter the lies. For the next 48 hours, the office buzzed with unlikely teamwork. Executives collaborated with janitors, learning efficiency tricks from years of manual labor. Zoe coordinated ensuring coffee flowed and morale stayed high. Tanya uncovered doctored financials proving the leaks were fabricated. Carlos suggested upgrades to the prototypes, making them stronger than before. Miguel's campaign featuring employee stories went viral, restoring public trust. By Saturday evening, the crisis was stabilizing. Ethan found Zoe in the break room, organizing snacks for the team. You did this? He said, his voice thick with gratitude. You turned this around. We did it? Zoe corrected, handing him a coffee. You just needed to see what was already here. The late summer sun dipped low over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. As Ethan stood by a makeshift altar of driftwood and wildflowers, his navy suit was tailored but unpretentious, his tie slightly askew from nervous adjustments. The grassy clearing buzzed with guests, settling into white folding chairs, a mix of Chicago's elite and the South Side's hard executives beside housekeepers, board members next to gardeners. Ethan's hands fidgeted, his eyes darting to the path where Zoe would soon appear. Laura, his assistant and best woman, nudged him, grinning. Stop messing with the tie, Ethan. You're gonna unravel it before she gets here. I'm nervous, he admitted, his voice low. What if she realizes she's too good for me? Laura chuckled, adjusting her blazer. She saved your company with a ragtag crew. Pretty sure she's not running now. Across the lake, in a wooden cabin serving as a dressing room, Zoe stood before a mirror, smoothing the folds of her white cotton dress. It flowed to her ankles, simple but elegant, with delicate lace at the neckline. Her hair was styled in loose waves, a soft veil pinned with a pearl clip. She turned to her mother, Lorraine, her voice shaky. Mom, is this too plain? We may have gone bigger. Lorraine adjusted the veil, her eyes warm. Zoe, you're glowing. Ethan's marrying you, not the dress. This is you, real beautiful, perfect. Tanya, applying a final touch of lip gloss, laughed. Girl, you're about to make that man faint. Please keep it simple. Keep it you. Jamal poked his head in sharp in a borrowed gray suit, his smile brighter since his surgery. Sis, are you ready? Ethan's out there looking like he's about to bolt or propose again. Zoe laughed, her nerves easing. Let's not give him ideas. The guest stood as the local violinist, a street performer Ethan had hired, began a soulful melody. Zoe emerged on Jamal's arm, who'd insisted on walking her down the aisle, in place of their absent father. Her smile, radiant and unforced, caught Ethan's breath. Jamal's steps were steady, his recovery a quiet triumph, and he whispered, You deserve this, sis. Be happy. At the altar, he shook Ethan's hand firmly. Take care of her, man, or I'm coming for you. Ethan grinned, his eyes locked on Zoe. No worries, Jamal. I'm not letting her go. The pastor, a warm-eyed man from a local community center, smiled at the couple. Welcome everyone to this celebration of love. Ethan and Zoe chose this lakeside surrounded by those who matter most to pledge their lives together. They've written their vows. Ethan took Zoe's hands, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Zoe, you walked into my life and flipped it upside down. You taught me that family isn't just a name. It's who stays when the world falls apart. You showed me that success isn't money, but the people you fight for. You made me braver and better, and I promise to love, support, and never doubt you again. Zoe's eyes glistened, her smile trembling. Ethan, you're stubborn, controlling, and too fond of fancy suits. The crowd chuckled, and Ethan grinned. But you're also loyal and kind, and fight for what matters. You taught me love isn't perfect. It's choosing to face the mess together. I promise to challenge you, laugh with you, and love you even when you drive me crazy. The crowd laughed again, and Lorraine wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Margaret, seated beside her, smiled softly, her usual reserve softened by the moment. The pastor called for the rings, simple gold bands chosen from a small downtown jeweler. Ethan slid Zoe's on his fingers, steady. I do, he said, his voice breaking. Zoe slipped the ring onto Ethan's finger, her hands trembling slightly. I do, she said, her eyes never leaving his. The pastor beamed. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss the bride. Their kiss was slow, passionate, a promise, sealed under the fading sun. The crowd erupted in cheers, Tanya's whoop startling a nearby flock of gulls. As they pulled apart, Zoe reached into her bouquet, pulling out a small rice pouch. She sprinkled it at Ethan's feet, grinning. Family tradition, she said, prosperity, and a reminder. I'm still calling some shots. Ethan laughed, pulling her close. Always in charge, huh? Always, she said, kissing him again. The reception was a joyful clash of worlds. A band played waltzes and salsa, Margaret twirling with Carlos the gardener, who proved a skilled dancer. Lorraine taught a group of executives meringue, their laughter echoing across the lake. Zoe and Ethan opened with a waltz, then joined a group dance, surrounded by staff turned friends and executives. Happy, Ethan? Asked spinning Zoe as the crowd clapped. Complete, she said, her smile brighter than the sunset. Even if I'm stuck with you forever. As they danced, the lake shimmering behind them, Ethan and Zoe knew they'd found something rarer than wealth. A love that bridged worlds, built on trust and strong enough to face anything.